properly. Rocket fragments pulled from the ocean show vividly the extent of that failure. Fire burned through the O-ring sealed joint that connects the segments of the solid rocket booster, then continued to burn to the fuel tank. But the greater blame for the tragedy was laid at the feet of NASA management. The Rogers Commission noted a clear flaw in the decision-making process.
That certainly was a terrible thing to hear about. It showed clear problems with internal communications at NASA.
The Rogers Commission concluded that if the decision-makers had all the facts, they most surely would not have launched Challenger on that cold January day. After the Challenger tragedy, NASA made widespread changes, not only in how decisions are made, but also in how the space shuttle was built.
We totally redesigned the solid rocket motors. There's heaters all the way around the solid motor joints to keep those O-rings warm. We also worked on escape systems for the orbiter. We actually put what we call a fireman's pole inside the orbiter so that the crew could possibly bail out at low altitude.
And NASA revised its weather rules for launching. The minimum temperature was raised from 31 degrees to a range from 36 to 48 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on wind speed and humidity. Nearly 3 years later, on September 29, 1988, the shuttle Discovery sat on launch pad 39B under clear blue skies, ready for liftoff. The first launch since the Challenger tragedy.
10, we have a go for main engine start. 7, 6.
When the clock started counting that day, I'll never forget it. I was almost nauseous.
We have main engine start.
NASA's return to space is next in the conclusion of When Weather Changed History.
And liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space.
September 29th, 1988. The first shuttle launch since the Challenger disaster nearly 3 years earlier. This time, Bob Seek is the launch director.
It was like the first mission all over again. A lot of anxiety, trepidation.
The 4-day mission is a success. Discovery safely lands at Edwards Air Force Base in California.
And it was a stupendous mission, a great return to flight mission. And it looked like when they returned to flight that NASA would ride high again.
And it did, for 15 years and 87 shuttle missions. Until February 1st, 2003, when the space shuttle Columbia broke up during re-entry, killing all 7 crew members. Just like Challenger, Columbia experienced severe wind shear during its launch. It caused insulation to break away from the fuel tank and damage the spacecraft. It was another enormous setback for America's space program.
When we lost Columbia in 2003, it became obvious that it's now time to move on. And the result of that has been that the shuttle is now on schedule for retirement by about 2010.
But the space program will continue. There are plans for another mission to the moon as a stepping stone for an eventual mission to Mars. Judith Garcia says if given the chance, she'd gladly go.
The most worthwhile things in history have been extremely dangerous. And I look upon space exploration as being a very valuable effort.
It'll always be risky, but I think maintaining a strong presence in space for some of the values that we get from it is well worth the risk.
It's the future. I mean, I think people want to get off this planet, eventually move out into the solar system for the resources involved and everything else.
We can learn a lot more about our planet from the research we do from space, and that's everything from weather satellites to medical research in microgravity to the industrial research. The future for this civilization may be on another planet out there in our system.
It is the same thought expressed by President Reagan when he memorialized the Challenger crew.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them.